Gianna whispered, grabbing Oscar's hand. "This is for Bobby's own good. This is a good thing we're doing, even if it doesn't seem like it right now." She let go of her boyfriend's hand and looked at me briefly. We were standing in the second-floor hallway of the cabin we'd rented. On one side, there was a rustic-style railing overlooking the living room below. On the other two bedroom doors and a bathroom door lined the wall. I nodded and turned toward Bobby's room, letting Gianna pass first. She walked inside on the balls of her feet. Oscar and I followed suit. Bobby was still passed out on the bed, fully clothed and lying on top of the covers. Oscar and Gianna moved to the side of the bed closest to the door. Oscar positioned himself near the head of the bed, with a side table and a leather chair behind him. I tracked around to the other side of the bed, being careful not to trip over Bobby's luggage. Since Bobby was on the other side of the king bed from me, it meant I would have to jump onto the bed if I needed to hold him down. So I simply stood between the bed and the wall, waiting to see what happened. Gianna reached slowly toward Bobby's right front pocket to start her search. She felt the pocket from the outside, gently searching with her fingers. She took her hand away and nodded at us. She'd felt something. Oscar and I tensed slightly, holding our hands up to get ready as Gianna hooked her fingers into the pocket and proceeded to reach inside for whatever she'd felt. Bobby's eyes shot open in the dark. "What are you doing?" he asked, voice thick with sleep.
"Hold him!"
Gianna shouted as Bobby reached up to grab her arm. Oscar caught Bobby's right arm and put his other hand on Bobby's shoulder while I jumped up onto the bed and did the same on my side.
"What the fuck?"
Bobby screamed, thrashing to get free. Gianna yanked her hand out of his pocket, holding a small item.
"Got it!"
she said, stepping away and shoving the item into her pocket.
"Bobby!
Oscar shouted.
Stop fighting! This is for your own good! Give it back!"
Bobby screamed, his voice shrill and filled with terror. He fought against me, trying to slip out of my grasp. I leaned down further, getting closer, trying to keep him from getting free. He was stronger than he looked. His legs were still free, and he jerked his left knee up, connecting with the side of my head. I fell against the headboard and then onto the floor between the bed and the wall. There was a crash, and I heard Oscar shout.
"Bobby, stop!"
Gianna screamed. I got up just in time to see Bobby chasing Gianna out of the room. There was a scuffling sound, a brief scream, and then another loud crash that sounded like it came from downstairs. Oscar, who'd been thrown into the bedside table shortly after I'd taken a knee to the head, scrambled to his feet as I ran around to the foot of the bed. I got to the bedroom door first, and I could see Bobby at the railing overlooking the living room, peering down, seemingly frozen. My heart started crashing around in my chest. It was suddenly hard to breathe. I stepped out into the hallway just ahead of Oscar. Both of us stepped up to the railing, one on each side of Bobby, and looked down into the living room. Gianna lay on the hardwood floor below, next to a wooden table near the couch. The lamp that had been on the table was now on the floor, a foot away from Gianna's head. She was on her chest, her right arm trapped under her body, her head twisted awkwardly to the left. The one eye I could see was open but unmoving. As the three of us looked down, blood began to spread out from under her head. The tires crunched on fallen pine needles and the loose dirt on the hard-packed road. We had the windows up against the cold mountain air. Looking out the back passenger window of the Hyundai SUV, I saw piles of discolored snow under trees and in the shade of boulders, hiding from the destructive sunlight, clinging to life while all the other snow had melted away to nothing. It hadn't snowed up here in a week, but there was snow in the forecast. We'd planned it that way. I looked over at Bobby, who lay slouched in the seat behind the driver. He was asleep, his forearms resting on his belly. Sometime during his nap, he pulled the long sleeve of his right arm up. I'd watched him do it, his eyes still closed. He probably didn't even realize he was doing it. Once the sleeve was up, he scratched softly at a discolored wound on the inside of his forearm, near his elbow. His pale skin was dotted with track marks where he'd injected heroin into his body. "Here's the turn," Gianna said from the passenger seat. "Yeah," Oscar said, slowing as we approached the driveway to the cabin. He turned on the blinker, even though we were completely alone on the road. The clicking of the turn signal seemed loud in the vehicle. I looked back out the window as we made the turn, listening to the tires crunch over pebbles and clumps of dirt. I thought about how long it would take for a pebble to break down and become a part of dirt. In that same vein, I thought about how long it would take for a large boulder to break down into smaller pebbles. Thousands of years, probably, or tens of thousands. So 1 week in a cabin wasn't much. It was barely a blink when compared to that kind of timeline. Just 1 week. I looked over at Bobby, who was coming awake now. Just 1 week, I thought. One long goddamn week. "We almost there?" Bobby asked, pulling a sleeve back down to his wrist. "That's it right there," Oscar said, pointing up the hill to the cabin just coming into view behind a group of pine trees. "Nice," Bobby said. "Looks pretty fancy. How much did this cost you guys?" "It wasn't too bad," I said. "Besides, when's the last time we all went away together like this?" "It was 2016, Gianna said. "When we went to Lake Mead, remember?" "Oh, Jesus," Bobby said. "Don't bring that up. I'd managed to forget all about that." "Well, maybe you shouldn't forget," Gianna said. "I said I was sorry. I don't know how many fucking times," Bobby shot back. "Hey, okay," I said. "Let's not start this one off by yelling at each other, yeah? We're here. It's beautiful. Look at that view." Oscar pulled up next to the cabin, which sat on the top of a cliff, overlooking a wide valley across which we could see snow-tipped mountains. It was a great view. "Damn," Bobby said. "That is nice." Oscar shut off the car and opened his door, letting a rush of frigid air into the car. The rest of us followed suit, getting out of the car and pulling our jackets on. The only sounds were the wind through the trees and the occasional bird chirping. The place was secluded, all right. That was the idea. The four of us stood in front of the SUV, looking out over the sweeping valley. There were no buildings that I could see, not even a road. It was a national forest land for miles. 1 week, I thought, sneaking a look at Bobby. Just 1 week. "Well, I need to use the bathroom," Bobby said, clapping his hands together. "Got one in the chamber." Gianna and I shared a look. Did he really think we didn't know? Did he think we were that stupid? "Okay," Oscar said, pulling out his phone. "I have the code in the email. I'll go open the door." He walked to the front of the cabin while Bobby got his ratty backpack out of the SUV. Oscar hurried up the 3 steps of the rustic wooden porch. He didn't want Bobby to see him put the code in. We had discussed it, Oscar, Gianna, and me, just in case. "I'll come back out and help unload when I'm done dropping the kids off at the pool," Bobby said, walking toward the house with his backpack. Gianna and I said nothing. We knew he wouldn't be out of the bathroom for at least 20 minutes. We'd be done by then. This was par for the course with Bobby, since he had started using. Empty promises, lies, and poor decisions. But all those things paled in comparison to the other ways he was fucking his life up. When Bobby was inside the house, out of hearing range, Gianna said, "Do you think a week will be long enough?" "I hope so. Everything I've read says it should be fully out of his system in 3 or 4 days. Hopefully he'll come to his senses after that." "God, this is going to suck," she said as I opened the rear door to access all our supplies and luggage. "Yeah," I said. "It sure is." The cabin was about 10 years old, 2 stories, and plenty comfortable. It was someone's secluded getaway that was put on Airbnb when they weren't using it. Probably a summer cabin, and it was the dead of winter right now. The ground floor featured an open floor plan, with no walls separating the kitchen, living room, dining room, and entryway. The staircase to the second floor was near the front door, on the left side of the house. It led up to a balcony configuration, where you could look up from the living room and see the doors to 2 of the 3 bedrooms and the shared bathroom. The master bedroom was tucked away at the other end of the balcony from the stairwell. The master bedroom was the only one with an attached bathroom, so that was the one we were going to put Bobby in, but not until we put our plan into action. If we offered him the master bedroom at first, he would have known something was up. So Gianna and Oscar took the bedroom initially. Bobby and I took the other 2. When Bobby came out of the bathroom, well after we had already unloaded everything, he was clearly high. His eyelids were heavy, his speech slow, and his slouch more pronounced. Enjoy it, I thought, because come tomorrow morning, you'll be done with that poison. We got settled as evening approached, unloading the food we'd brought. The other supplies, stuff we'd brought specifically to help Bobby go through withdrawals, were hidden safely in the master bedroom. Vitamins, plenty of Gatorade, juice, and water. Melatonin, and some other supplements that were supposed to help make the process a little less excruciating. Plus, crackers, protein bars, and soup. The dining area, adjacent to the kitchen, featured a sliding glass door that looked out onto the back porch and the amazing view beyond. As darkness crept over the land, I stood and looked out that door, close enough to feel the cold trying to seep through the glass. Dark clouds loomed in the distance, blocking my view of the snow-tipped mountains on the other side of the wide valley. They were moving toward us. The forecast was right. We were going to get a snowstorm by the looks of it. The place had Wi-Fi and a backup generator, which was nice. The heater seemed to work very well, as the cabin was toasty. The master bedroom had a flat-screen TV on the wall with streaming capabilities. Bobby could watch movies while he went through withdrawals. This would help keep his mind occupied. But we would take his phone away, because, technically, what we were planning on doing was illegal. False imprisonment, they called it. Holding someone against their will, even if it was for their own good. I watched the storm roll in as Gianna and Oscar started making dinner. Bobby lounged in the living room, nodding off on the couch with his phone held absently in his hand. We had all been friends since high school, which seemed like an eternity ago. We'd kept in touch, although Bobby had joined the military and had been gone for 4 years immediately after high school. When his contract ended, he came home, and we had all picked up where we left off. For a while, it was great. He was like a brother to me, so it was like having the family back together. But then he started using. At first, he borrowed money and never paid it back. Then, things started going missing from our homes after he visited. Things that could be sold for a quick buck at pawn shops. He got fired from his job, his girlfriend broke up with him, he got evicted from his apartment. He'd been couch surfing, staying at my house until I got fed up with him. Then he headed over to Oscar and Gianna's place and stayed with them until they got fed up, then back to my place. It wasn't like we could turn him away. He was our friend. But we had to start locking up anything remotely valuable. When we confronted him about stealing from us, he would just deny and deflect. He was like a different person. But I could still see the old Bobby in there, the guy who always had our backs, the guy who always had a smile and a kind word, the guy who wouldn't hesitate to step up and take the blame for something he didn't do, just to protect his friends. He was still in there somewhere, and the 3 of us knew it. But we were at our wits' end with him. We couldn't just disown him or leave him to his own devices. We didn't want him to live on the streets. He would end up in jail or dead before too long. So we'd decided to take drastic action. We decided to get him clean ourselves. We decided to help our friend like he'd helped us over the years. But we didn't know what the hell we were getting into. I stood on the back deck in 3 inches of snow, bundled against the cold. Snowflakes battered my face as the wind blew. It was nearly 10 o'clock and pure dark outside, with the storm clouds blocking any moon. The sliding glass door opened behind me. I turned to see Oscar step out onto the deck. He's in his room, probably asleep by now. Haven't heard anything from him in a while. Okay, I said. Let's give it another hour or so. It's freezing out here, Oscar said. I nodded, eyes squinting against the incoming snow. Did you put the new handle on the door? Yeah, Oscar said. We'll be able to lock him in now. We bought a handle for the master bedroom door that had a key lock on both sides. Now that it was installed, we only had one more thing to do to start the process. The biggest thing. Good, I said, then looked back out at the night and the curtains of snow blowing in the wind. Oscar was silent for several long moments, looking out at the darkness beyond the deck railing. Are we completely sure about this? We can just make this a vacation. Maybe talk to him about it? Offer to help him pay for rehab? Do you know how much rehab costs? I said without looking at Oscar. Inpatient, which is the only kind that will work for him, starts at $12,000. I know you don't have that kind of money, neither do I. Yeah, Oscar said. This doesn't feel right now that we're up here. I hate to do this to him. I don't want to do this either, but I don't see an alternative. He'll thank us when it's over and done with. But before that, he'll hate us. We just have to get through the first 3 or 4 days. After that, things will get better. Oscar fell silent again. I walked forward and looked down over the railing of the cantilevered deck. It was a good 100-foot drop to the bottom of the cliff on top of which the cabin had been built. The tops of snow-covered pine trees were barely visible now. Having never been a fan of heights, I didn't stay for long. Although I'd come out on the deck earlier, just before the storm reached us, I hadn't been able to bring myself to look over the edge. Something about the snow and the darkness now made it a little less scary. It was a small feat of courage that I needed to give me confidence for what came next. I promised myself I wouldn't break, no matter how much Bobby cried and begged and pleaded. I would stay strong for my friend, and he would thank us for it later. I turned around and walked past Oscar to the sliding glass door. I opened it, banged the snow off my boots, and stepped inside. You coming? I asked Oscar. My question seemed to break him out of his trance. Yeah, he said, turning and coming inside with me. Gianna glanced at us over the back of the couch, a book held in one hand. She smiled sadly. We all knew that things were going to be tough, but we had no way of knowing just how tough they would get. I opened the door to Bobby's room slowly. Gianna and Oscar stood nearby in the hallway, out of sight, just in case Bobby woke up. The room was dark, and I'd turned the hallway light off so it wouldn't wake him up. The only light was coming from downstairs, providing just enough illumination for me to make out the layout of the dark room. Bobby's slow and steady breathing remained unchanged as I snuck into the room. He lay sprawled on the bed, fully clothed and on top of the covers, mouth open and eyes closed. His backpack sat on a leather chair in the corner of the room. His other luggage was at the foot of the bed. He hadn't unpacked anything yet. I grabbed the backpack and moved out of the room to where Gianna and Oscar stood in the hallway. Setting the bag down and kneeling next to it, I started searching its pockets for the dope. Among other random odds and ends, I found a dozen syringes, some cotton balls, 2 lighters, and a spoon. No heroin. Shit, I whispered. It must be in a pants pocket. So grab his pants, Oscar said. He's still wearing them. Shit, Oscar said. Maybe we should put this off for now. Wait until he takes a shower or something. I shook my head. Don't tell me you didn't smell him in the car. He hasn't taken a shower in days. Who knows how much longer he'll go. We're doing this now, Gianna said. If we let him use one more time, it will just take that much longer for the stuff to get out of his system. So here's what we'll do. We'll all go into the room quietly. You two will position yourselves on either side of the bed, just in case he wakes up while I'm trying to find the drugs. And what if he does wake up? Oscar asked. Then you'll hold him down until I have the heroin, Gianna said. If he makes a big deal of it, we'll take him and put him in the master bedroom. If he wants to be calm and cool about it, we'll give him free rein. You still have the car keys on you, right? Oscar nodded and patted his pocket. Not like he could leave anyway. Not in this weather. Keep them on you anyway. Who knows what he might try if he gets desperate enough. Oscar nodded again. Gianna looked at each of us in turn. Are you ready? Yes, I said. Oscar hesitated and then said he was ready. We can do this, Gianna said, grabbing Oscar's hand. This is for Bobby's own good. This is a good thing we're doing, even if it doesn't seem like it right now. She let go of her boyfriend's hand and looked at me briefly. I stepped aside to let her pass. She walked inside on the balls of her feet. Oscar and I followed suit. Oscar and Gianna moved to the side of the bed closest to the door. Oscar positioned himself near the head of the bed, with a side table and the leather chair behind him. I tracked around to the other side of the bed, being careful not to trip over Bobby's luggage. I stood between the bed and the wall, waiting to see what happened. Oddly, I wasn't nervous. I thought I would be, but I wasn't. In fact, I was kind of excited. Maybe because, deep down, I was mad at Bobby for stealing from me and being a mooch. Maybe I wanted him to suffer just a little for all the pain he'd caused us with his addiction. I didn't have time to analyze those feelings further because Gianna reached slowly toward Bobby's right front pocket to start her search. She felt the pocket from the outside, gently searching with her fingers. She took her hand away and nodded at us. She'd felt something. Oscar and I tensed slightly, holding our hands up to get ready as Gianna hooked her fingers into the pocket and proceeded to reach inside for whatever she'd felt. Bobby's eyes shot open in the dark.
What are you doing?
He asked, voice thick with sleep.
Hold him!
Gianna shouted as Bobby went to grab her arm. Oscar caught Bobby's right arm and put his other hand on Bobby's shoulder, while I jumped up onto the bed and did the same on my side.
What the fuck?
Bobby screamed, thrashing to get free. Gianna yanked her hand out of his pocket, holding up a small baggie with tan-colored powder in it.
Got it!
She said, stepping away and shoving the heroin in her pocket.
Bobby!
Oscar shouted.
Stop fighting! This is for your own good! Give it back!
Bobby screamed, his voice shrill and filled with terror. He fought against me, trying to slip out of my grasp. I leaned down further, getting closer, trying to keep him from slipping out of my grasp. He was stronger than he looked. His legs were still free, and he jerked his left knee up, connecting with the side of my head. I fell against the headboard and then onto the floor between the bed and the wall. There was a crash, and I heard Oscar shout.
Bobby, stop!
Gianna screamed. I got up just in time to see Bobby chasing Gianna out of the room. There was a scuffling sound, a brief scream, and then another loud crash that sounded like it came from downstairs. Oscar scrambled to his feet as I ran around the foot of the bed. I got to the bedroom door first, and I could see Bobby at the railing overlooking the living room, looking down, seemingly frozen. Finally, my heart started crashing around in my chest. It was suddenly hard to breathe. I stepped out into the hallway just ahead of Oscar. Both of us stepped up to the railing, one on each side of Bobby, and looked down into the living room. Gianna lay on the hardwood floor below, next to a wooden table near the couch. The lamp that had been on the table was now on the floor a foot away from Gianna's head. She was on her chest, her right arm trapped under her body, her head twisted awkwardly to the left. The one eye I could see was open, but unmoving. As the three of us looked down, blood began to spread out from under her head. Oscar screamed and ran down the stairs.
Baby, are you okay?
I watched, numb yet sick to my stomach, as Oscar dropped to his knees and caressed her hair while rubbing her back. When she didn't move or talk, he shook her.
Babe?
Still nothing. He placed 2 fingers under her jaw and felt for a pulse.
No,
he said, shifting his fingers and feeling again.
No fucking way!
Bobby turned to move down the stairs, but I grabbed him by the back of the neck. Don't you fucking move, Bobby,
I want to help her.
he said in a shaky voice.
She's dead!
Oscar shouted up at us, turning Gianna over and revealing the gash on the other side of her head where she'd hit the corner of the table. He pulled her into him and hugged her.
She's fucking dead!
Tears streamed down his face. Bobby tried to pull away again,
No,
I said.
I'm going to call 911.
He said, shaking my grip off and turning toward me.
It was an accident. They need to know it was an accident. I didn't mean to do it. No,
I said.
I'll call. You just need to sit down somewhere, okay? Fuck you!
Bobby shouted.
It was an accident.
He ran into his room and grabbed his phone from where it had fallen off the bedside table. I followed him inside and waited for him to stand up and turn around. When he did, I punched him as hard as I could in the face. He stumbled and fell back into the leather chair, unconscious. I stood over him, breathing hard, my hand hurting. I stared at him for a long moment, until Oscar's crying brought me back to reality. I grabbed Bobby's phone from the floor and shoved it in my pocket. Then I pulled my phone out and called 911. There was no way anyone was getting up the mountain until the storm died down, so we had to wait. When I got off the phone with 911, I dragged Bobby to the master bedroom and locked him inside without his phone or any of his other possessions. Then, I managed to pry Oscar away and covered Gianna's body with a blanket. Gianna's death seemed unreal to me. I couldn't let it sink in, not yet. Not while I was the only one thinking clearly. I felt the tide of emotions inside rising, but I dammed those emotions up. I couldn't let them out, not yet. When the police finally came up and took over, I would be able to process the whole thing. But for now, I needed to keep it together, because I sure as fuck wasn't going to give Bobby his heroin back, not after Gianna died for it. So I was going to have to deal with him and with a distraught Oscar until the police could get up the mountain. They could determine what to do about it. I had just finished using the bathroom when I heard the sound of something breaking from downstairs. I immediately rushed to the master bedroom to see if Bobby had somehow broken out. The door was still closed and locked. I raced downstairs and found that Oscar had broken into a padlocked cabinet in the kitchen. He had a bottle of vodka upturned, the liquor bubbling as Oscar chugged it down.
Jesus,
I said, snatching the bottle away from him. Oscar got into my face, his eyes freezing me in place as he snatched the bottle back.
Don't fuck with me, Andre. Not right now. The love of my life is dead, so I'm going to get nice and fucking drunk. Okay,
I said, raising my hands in surrender.
Just try not to get alcohol poisoning.
Oscar shook his head, walking over to the sliding glass door. The blizzard was still raging outside, the snow on the back deck well over a foot deep now.
I want to kill him,
Oscar said.
I want to fucking kill him.
That's not going to happen, I said. It was an accident. If you kill him, you'll go to prison. I said this with conviction, but I wasn't so sure it was an accident. Not really. I couldn't see Gianna just falling over that railing. She had help, a shove from Bobby. I didn't say I was going to kill him, Oscar said. I just said I wanted to. I know it was an accident, but that doesn't change how I feel right now. Oscar clenched his teeth, grimacing.
God damn it!
I had no idea what to say. I put my hand out. Let me have a little bit. Oscar hesitated for a moment before handing me the bottle of vodka. I took a large swig out of it, grimacing as I swallowed. Then I handed the bottle back as the liquor warmed my stomach. We just need to wait it out until the storm stops, I said. When the police get here, we'll see what they think about this whole thing. Oscar didn't seem to hear me. He just swigged more vodka and looked out at the storm. After a long moment, he glanced over his shoulder at the shape of Gianna under the blanket. I'm going upstairs, he said as he turned to go. To do what? I asked, following behind. To get away from my dead girlfriend, he snapped. Still, I followed him up. He turned into the first bedroom, the one that was supposed to be mine, and tried to shut the door in my face. I shoved it open and followed him inside. Give me the key, I said.
What key? Don't play dumb with me. Give me the key, Oscar.
Grumbling, he shoved his free hand in his pocket and came out with the key to the master bedroom door. He handed it to me and shoved it into my pocket. I now had both keys to the door. I'm going to keep watch, I said. Get some sleep if you can.
Fat fucking chance.
I turned to go and then stopped. I could feel the sea of emotions inside, crashing against the dam I'd built. I just needed to keep it together for a while longer. A day, maybe 2.
I'm sorry this happened,
I said without looking back at Oscar. He made no answer, and I left the room, shutting the door behind me. I grabbed the leather chair from Bobby's room and set it in the hall outside the master bedroom. Slumping down into the chair and getting comfortable, I listened for sounds from inside. There was only silence. I started to worry that I'd hit him too hard, but quickly dismissed the concern. If I did hit him too hard, so what? That sea of emotion swelled inside me, making the dam creak and shudder. I had to change my train of thought to avoid getting overwhelmed. I settled in for a long wait, but then I remembered something. The heroin. It was still in Gianna's pocket. I crept down the stairs, steeling myself with every step. Kneeling beside her body, I gently lifted the blanket and grabbed the baggie of heroin from her pocket. Looking around, I searched for a place to hide it. If Bobby did manage to get out of the room, he would assume one of us had it, so I figured hiding it was the better option. I thought about flushing it down the toilet, but I figured the police might need it as evidence if they were going to charge Bobby with a crime. So part of me hoped they would. So I found a place to hide it, and then I went back upstairs and sat in the chair outside the master bedroom. I was dozing off when Oscar nudged me.
Hey,
He said, bleary-eyed in the pale morning light coming through the front windows of the cabin. It was still snowing, I saw, but not as hard as last night.
Go get some real sleep. I'll keep watch for a few hours.
I considered this. My back was hurting from sitting in the chair all night.
Are you sober now? Sober enough,
Oscar said.
Besides, you have both keys. Keep them. I'll wake you up if I hear anything from him.
I nodded and stood up.
He was awake around 4 this morning,
I said.
He begged for his dope for a while, but he didn't try to get out or anything. We'll have to give him some food and water soon, but we both need to be here to do that.
Oscar nodded.
Yeah, got it. Go get some sleep.
I moved down the hall to the same bedroom Oscar had used. Sleeping in Bobby's bedroom seemed wrong somehow. I left the door open a crack and then laid down on top of the bed, clothes still on. I closed my eyes. Soon, I was asleep. A crash from down the hall woke me up what seemed like minutes later. I propped myself on one arm, unsure if the sound I heard was from the dream world or the real one. Then another crash came, followed by a scream of pain. It was real. I got off the bed and rushed out of the room. As I turned the corner toward the master bedroom, Bobby crashed into me. He shoved me with one hand and I tripped backward, falling to the floor and smacking the back of my head on a railing post. Bobby ran down to the stairwell, gripping the railing with his left hand as he whipped himself around and rushed down the stairs. I got to my feet and watched him yank open the front door and run out into the snow. The color on the railing grabbed my attention. There was a bloody hand mark where Bobby had touched it. I looked at the bedroom door and saw that the door handle had been disassembled. I saw a couple of tools on the floor on this side of the door, the same tools Oscar had used to install the handle. Rushing into the room, I noticed drops of blood on the carpet. The room was a mess, the bed disheveled. Oscar and Gianna's luggage was strewn around, but I saw no sign of Oscar until I came to the bathroom. He lay sprawled in the bathtub. His legs hung over the rim. Half of the shower curtain was pulled down as though he'd used it to try and keep himself up. He had one hand pressed up to his neck. Blood burbled out from between his fingers. His shirt was soaked. Oscar looked up at me, eyelids heavy, the life already fading from them.
He has my pocket knife,
he choked out. A violent swirl of hate for Bobby nearly overwhelmed me, but I fought it. I let the dam keep the rolling seas back. I had to keep my cool. I had to save my friend.
I'll be right back. I'm going to get the first aid kit.
I rushed downstairs and found the first aid kit we'd brought. When I got back to the bathroom, Oscar was no longer holding his neck. His eyes were closed. I dropped the first aid kit and leaned over, feeling for a pulse. There was none. Oscar was dead. I walked downstairs like a zombie. I put my boots on, grabbed my coat, and stepped out the open front door. But once I was outside, I paused. Then I turned back into the house and grabbed the heroin from where I'd hidden it, taped underneath one of the dining room chairs. I moved out into the front yard, following Bobby's footsteps through the snow. They went to the SUV, but the footsteps veered away. I followed them through the gently falling snow, the beauty of the winter wonderland lost on me as I tried to keep that dam inside from breaking. Bobby's footsteps moved down the driveway, but then turned into the woods before they reached the road. The snow was 2 feet deep in most places, with drifts even deeper here and there. I trudged through the woods, hands in my coat pockets. Maybe he was circling back to the cabin to get a coat. Otherwise, he would freeze to death sooner rather than later. Moving back toward the cabin, I decided to see if I could head him off. I trudged past the SUV and toward the edge of the cliff that the cabin was built on. Then I turned left and walked along the side of the cliff, leaving plenty of room so I didn't have to look down the sheer drop. As I moved, I scanned through the trees, looking for my friend. After just a few minutes of walking, I saw him come out of the trees about 15 yards ahead of me. He turned toward me, toward the cabin, and froze. He was hugging himself and shivering, but he still held Oscar's knife in his bloody hand, the blade still out. I took my hands out of my pockets to show that I was unarmed. I stopped when I was about 10 yards away.
"He tried to kill me,"
Bobby said in his whiny addict's voice.
"It was self-defense."
"I believe you," I said. "I just don't want anyone else to die. You're all I have left, Bobby." His face changed.
"He's dead?"
"You stabbed him in the throat," I said. "Yes, he's dead."
"I didn't mean to. He stabbed me first."
Bobby lifted his shirt and showed me a wound low on the left side of his abdomen. It was bleeding, but it didn't look life-threatening. "I said I believe you."
"You're not mad?"
he asked. "Of course I'm mad," I said. "2 of my best friends are dead, but that doesn't mean I want you to die too. I don't, okay? I came out here to bring you back. You'll freeze out here." For a moment, Bobby's eyes softened, but then they hardened again. "You're going to lock me up in that room again." "No," I said. "I won't." I reached slowly into my pants pocket and pulled out the baggie of heroin. "You can have this back. I don't care anymore. Just promise me you won't overdose." I saw the hunger come into my friend's eyes, and I felt the roiling sea of emotions inside, pressing against the dam, sending cracks through the cement. Bobby moved forward, his eyes fixed on the baggie. But as he reached out for it, I moved it out of his reach. "Give me the knife," I said, "and I'll give you the heroin." Bobby nodded, eyes gleaming. He handed me the knife. The cracks inside the dam expanded. I handed him the heroin. "Okay," I said, turning back toward the cabin. "Let's go." I let him walk ahead a couple of steps as the dam let loose inside me, all the pent-up emotions from the night exploding, flooding into me, overwhelming me. I jammed the knife into the side of Bobby's neck and yanked it out quickly. As he pulled away, he tripped down to the snowy ground, falling on his face. I fell onto him, stabbing him in the back in the frenzy of rage. Tears dripped from my face and onto his back as he writhed and screamed, and I stabbed and stabbed. When he finally stilled, the muscles in my arm were burning. I stood up from my friend in the blood-stained snow around his body. His legs shook, and I fell backward into the snow. I made no move to get up. Instead, I breathed heavily and watched the flakes float down toward me. The snow seemed to be falling faster now. That was good. I stared up for a long time, watching the snow, listening to the uncanny silence of the mountains, the faint, cottony sound of thousands of snowflakes settling down on the fallen snow. It was so peaceful in the silence immediately following death. When the police arrived the next day, I told them what had happened. Most of what had happened anyway. I told them that Bobby had run off down the driveway after killing Oscar, that he'd headed toward the road, that I hadn't followed him, that I didn't want to. I'd been too overcome with despair. And I said he had never come back. Enough snow had fallen to cover the tracks we'd made. almost as if the violence near the edge of the cliff had never happened. When I was finally allowed to leave, after many hours and many questions, I got into Oscar's SUV and looked over toward the cliff where I'd killed Bobby. I wondered what would happen to his body, down there at the bottom of the cliff among the trees. Someone would find it eventually. It wasn't an accessible area. There were no trails or campsites down there. I'd checked. But someone would find it. I just had to hope that, by the time it happened, his body would be too decomposed or ravaged by animals to be able to tell what had happened. Even if it came back on me, I didn't care. I didn't feel sorry for what I'd done. In my mind, it was nothing short of justice. Thanks for listening. If you enjoy these stories, be sure to subscribe to the podcast and check out some more of my episodes here.